Okay, so PM Narendra Modi ji,
Yeah.
right? His inner circle, it's like this constantly shifting thing.
Yeah.
Always changing.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It's super fascinating. And it really reflects like the priorities,
Yeah.
the needs,
Yeah.
of an office as powerful as that.
Absolutely.
And there's this new chapter that's beginning.
Yeah.
And it's with this appointment of his new private secretary,
Nidhi Tewari.
Nidhi Tewari, yeah. I almost think of it like, the prime minister's office.
Okay.
It's this super complex machine, right? And the private secretary is just like this crucial cog.
It's a great analogy.
So today we're going to deep dive into the details of this whole appointment. It's not just, to learn, who is Ms. Tewari,
Yeah.
but really get into, like, what does her background tell us about,
Yeah, where things are going.
where things are going exactly.
The direction.
What does this tell us about the PMO? What kind of expertise is being prioritized? What kind of signals does this send? That's what we're going to unpack.
And I think that's crucial. I mean, it's so easy to just kind of gloss over these personnel announcements, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually dig in and you look at Ms. Tewari's background and how quickly she's risen,
Oh, yeah.
a really compelling story emerges.
It does.
And it really does give us some insight, I think, into the Prime Minister's strategic thinking, especially when it comes to, forming his immediate team. And I think the speed of her ascent within the PMO, that's something we can't ignore.
Right. So, okay, let's just lay it out. Who is this person who has so quickly, gained this level of trust with the Prime Minister? So Nidhi Tewari, her appointment as private secretary, it took effect immediately, right?
Yeah.
Based on this order that was issued by the Department of Personnel and Training. This is on March 29th, 2025.
Very recent.
Very recent. And the interesting thing is it wasn't like an outsider they brought in.
No.
She was already a deputy secretary
in the PMO.
in the PMO.
She was already there.
She was already there. So it seems like her work there had already caught some eyes.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, right? The fact that she was already inside the PMO, it speaks to a level of familiarity, right?
Yes.
A demonstrated competence that clearly resonated with the decision makers. This isn't just filling a role, this is elevating someone who has already proven themselves capable within that really high pressure environment.
Right.
And her background, being a 2014 batch Indian Foreign Service officer, that adds another really fascinating layer to this whole story.
It really does. And something that, I don't know if you noticed this too, but it really stood out to me. She's potentially, and I'm emphasizing potentially, one of the youngest people to ever hold this super important position.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It does. And I think it raises so many interesting questions, right? Like, what does it mean, to have that kind of energy and perspective, a younger leader in such a pivotal role? It definitely challenges, I think, some of the traditional notions we have, and it could indicate, potentially, a strategic move towards incorporating fresh perspectives at the highest levels of government. And I think that's especially interesting if we consider, what's happening globally right now,
Right.
India's ambitions on the world stage, a younger, more dynamic approach in the PMO, I think that could be a huge asset.
Now, this is where it gets a little more personal.
Oh,
Ms. Tewari is actually from Memorganj in Varanasi,
okay.
which, if you've been following Indian politics, has been Prime Minister Modi's constituency since 2014.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty fascinating detail, isn't it?
It is.
Like, does this local connection actually play a role in all of this? Or is this just like a coincidence? What do you think?
It's hard to say definitively.
Right.
I mean, we can't know for sure what was going on in the minds of the decision makers.
Right.
But in Indian politics, these types of connections, they always generate speculation. And I think there's a reason for that. It could suggest, a deeper understanding of the local nuances, the concerns of the people that the Prime Minister represents directly, right?
Absolutely.
Whether that was a primary factor in her appointment, we don't know. But it adds a layer, an intriguing layer to her background, to her narrative.
It does. Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Let's really dig into this journey that she's been on that led her to this point. So back in 2013, she took the Union Public Services Commission examination, the UPSC.
His exam.
Huge exam.
Yeah.
And she got 96th rank.
Wow.
which is remarkable.
It is. It
It
is.
speaks to, a very sharp person.
Yeah.
Someone very dedicated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the UPSC exam, it is grueling, It really tests your knowledge, your aptitude across a whole range of different subjects. And to achieve a rank like that, a strong rank, it signifies, a comprehensive understanding of Indian governance and administration. It's a really solid foundation for anyone who wants to work within the government.
And before she even started her IFS career, she actually got some practical experience. She worked as an assistant commissioner in the commercial tax department in Varanasi. So it wasn't like she was, just focused on international affairs from the beginning.
Right.
She has this experience in domestic administration at the local level.
And I think that's so valuable. That early experience, that time she spent in Varanasi, it must have given her incredible insights into, the real practical challenges of governance. How do you actually implement policies? What's it like, at that interface between the administration and the public?
Right.
It's a whole different world from the theory of it all.
Right, exactly. And then she had a pretty significant tenure at the Ministry of External Affairs, right?
Yes.
And it was specifically in the Disarmament and International Security Affairs Division.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. But here's a detail that I think is super important. Reports indicate that she actually reported directly to National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. I mean, that's a really powerful connection and probably gave her this unique perspective on India's strategic interests.
For sure. Reporting directly to the NSA, that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
You're at the heart of India's national security apparatus. And that experience would have given her, this really deep understanding of international security, India's partnerships on the world stage, and just that delicate balance of power in the region, right?
Absolutely.
And it also suggests a high level of trust, I think, that she was entrusted with handling very sensitive information.
Right. So then we get to her entering the PMO. So she entered as an undersecretary in November 2022, and that was sort of the beginning of this rapid climb.
Yeah.
And then just a couple of months later, in January 2023, she got promoted to deputy secretary.
Wow.
And now, March 2025, she's the private secretary.
It's a meteoric rise.
It's so fast. It's not typical at all. So it really highlights, I think, the impact that she had in a very short span of time.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to assume that she very quickly demonstrated, exceptional abilities, right?
Yeah.
A real grasp of the prime minister's priorities and how he likes to work. To rise that quickly in such a high-stakes environment, I think it means one thing: a lot of trust and confidence from the senior leadership.
And within the PMO, she was part of, this is a mouthful again, the Foreign and Security section. So she's dealing with foreign affairs, national security, even atomic energy.
Big stuff.
Huge portfolio.
Yeah.
So it really shows how broad her responsibilities were even before this promotion.
Yeah, and handling areas that are that sensitive, that strategically important, it really speaks to the level of responsibility she was already given, right? And, her contributions in these domains, it suggests she was right there, with the high-level decision-making processes, getting a close-up view of India's strategic objectives.
And we can't forget about her expertise in international relations, which, from what I've read, played a crucial role during India's G20 presidency.
Well, right.
I mean, that was a period of, really intense diplomacy and global engagement.
Yeah.
And so her involvement really suggests she was instrumental in navigating those complex international discussions.
Yeah, and the G20 presidency, that was a huge moment for India. It really solidified its position as a global leader. So to play a key role during that time, you'd have to have incredible diplomatic skills, negotiation skills. You'd have to really understand global dynamics. I mean, that's invaluable experience,
Right.
going into this new role where she'll be, interacting with all these national and international stakeholders.
Absolutely. On behalf of the Prime Minister.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's actually talk about this private secretary role itself, because we've been dancing around it a bit, but we haven't really gotten into the weeds.
Yeah, let's get specific.
Let's get specific, okay. So it's mentioned that this role falls under level 12 of the pay matrix. And I know that sounds like, very bureaucratic. Jargon.
Yeah.
But essentially it means like a very high level of seniority. Responsibility within, the whole government framework. So think of it as a marker of, the trust and the authority that this position has.
Exactly. A level 12 position, you're typically going to be involved in shaping policy, you're interacting directly with the top leadership,
Right.
and you're managing how information flows.
Right.
So it's not just an administrative role, it's really a strategic position that supports the prime minister's day-to-day functioning and also, his long-term goals and objectives.
Okay. And then there's this detail. The appointment is coterminous with her current position or until further orders.
Right.
So in normal words, her time as private secretary, it's tied to her being in the PMO.
Right.
And the prime minister's, confidence in her.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty standard practice for these key roles in the prime minister's office.
Right, and I think it's smart. It gives them flexibility, right? Make sure the people in these crucial positions are aligned with the prime minister's needs, his priorities.
Yes.
And it really just speaks to the need for a really close working relationship in this kind of role.
So basically, she is right at the heart of, the prime minister's operational core.
Yeah.
She's a key gatekeeper, a coordinator,
Trusted advisor.
in the inner circle.
That inner circle, yeah. And the private secretary, it's a crucial bridge. You're managing the prime minister's engagements, you're handling really important communications. You're the main point of contact for so many different stakeholders.
Yeah.
So you need incredible organizational skills. You have to be discreet, and you have to have this deep understanding of what the prime minister is trying to achieve.
So now you're probably thinking like, okay, why do I care?
Right.
You, the listener.
Yeah.
Why is this important? Well, I think understanding these individuals, the people who hold these key positions, it gives you a much clearer picture of how the government actually functions.
Yeah.
What are their priorities?
Yeah, what's going on behind the scenes?
Exactly, because the people around the prime minister, they shape the information that he gets.
Right.
And that shapes the decisions he makes.
Absolutely. The prime minister's office, it is this center of power and influence, right? So by understanding who these key personnel are, their background, their expertise, we get these little glimpses into the kind of advice and support that the prime minister is relying on.
Right.
As he's dealing with all these complex national and international challenges.
Right. And it's not just like, this is an interesting story.
Yeah.
The speed at which Ms. Tewari has moved up, it suggests that her contributions have been very highly valued.
Yeah.
Like she is someone with potential.
Big potential.
Big potential
Yeah.
to contribute at, the highest levels of government.
Right.
And that in itself is something to pay attention to.
And I think it speaks to, that there are meritocratic aspects within the PMO.
Yeah.
That if you are competent and you're committed, there are opportunities to rise to these positions of responsibility.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Today we looked at this appointment of Nidhi Tewari as PM Narendra Modi's new private secretary.
Yeah.
We looked at her background. She's an IFS officer. She specializes in foreign policy, security.
Right.
We talked about her connection to the prime minister's constituency in Varanasi and this really fast journey within the PMO. And it's all culminating in this incredibly important role.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
And I think as we reflect on all of this, it raises a really interesting question, right? How much do those specific things, the professional background,
Yeah.
even where someone comes from regionally,
Right.
how much do those things actually shape how an office like the prime minister's office functions?
Right.
What qualities and experiences beyond just, checking off boxes on a resume, what do they really look for when making these crucial appointments?
Yeah, it really is food for thought. And it's fascinating to ponder. And if you found this deep dive into, the PMO Insightful, and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, join the party.
Join the party, exactly. We're always unpacking these stories behind the headlines. We want to give you a deeper understanding of the world.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.